5,524 followers on Twitter. And then over the course of the next month, we gained about 50 followers. But on June 28th is when we started this educational gift series. And you can just see our followers like skyrocket through the course of this gift series from June 28th to July 9th. And so we had gained about 50 followers for the month of June, but during this 2-week gift series, we gained between 100 and 150 followers. So it just proved how important it is to communicate science in a variety of different ways and using different media to convey different topics. We were particularly excited about several of our followers asking us to post these gifts so that they could use them in their classrooms to communicate science with these gifts in to their students. After the gift series, we still did continue to gain followers, and throughout the end of the internship in late July, when we last checked, we had 5,742 followers on Twitter.
Then just another fun statistic to look at, we compared kind of the engagement on social media for the 11 weeks of the internship versus the 11 weeks before. So the light blue numbers was kind of the engagement for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, those 11 weeks before. And then the green numbers are showing that increase in engagement with all the different types of posts that we use during the program. So that was really cool to see as well.
The last major project that we worked on to communicate science to the public was researching for the What is Geodesy page. So a lot of different geodetic topics are explained on the internet in like single pages. So you can find a page about GPS, a page about earthquake monitoring, but it's difficult to find an entire base that has all of this information that can scaffold someone's knowledge up and build their knowledge from really having no foundation to having a really solid foundation of what geodesy is and these different geodetic techniques are. So one of our goals this summer was to research some of these techniques and begin the What is Geodesy page so that we could have this resource accessible to a lot of different people. And so personally, I was researching the GPS section and really going from how it works in the basic level to a much more advanced level, and looking at how GPS can be used for natural disaster monitoring. And so I learned a lot about geodesy and GPS throughout this process. And I also learned a lot about how to start at a base level and continue to explain further so that you can reach a more advanced level, but that someone who had no background in geodesy could read something that you've written and really gain a fundamental understanding of the topic.
Then another focus this summer was on building the community. So we kind of tried a little campaign of doing Fieldwork Friday, of using all the great fieldwork photos that people were posting in the Slack channel. So thank you to everyone for your amazing pictures. But every Friday we'd post kind of like a little behind the scenes look, so to speak, of the engineers doing maintenance or installation work or anything like that, just to kind of build that community with the public in UNAVCO, and they get to see kind of how everything works during the summer. And then we also continued the little geodesy kind of guess where the GPS station game is too. So that was also another fun way to have people interact a little bit more by guessing one day where the station was and then following up the next day to see if they got it right. And then, you know, sometimes we kind of throw in a little factoid as well. So that was our two biggest social media ways to build community. And then the other one, which was a big project with the website migration, we of course had to migrate all the project highlights to the new website as well. So if anyone's looked, there's quite a few of them. I believe they go back to about 2002. So that was a big project to work on. At the moment, they're all caught up to 2012, but they're definitely a really important way to build community because they're really fun and engaging posts that people can read about all the great work that UNAVCO does with other communities, universities, and around the world. So hopefully soon those will all be up to date.
Another way that we built a community at UNAVCO was by interviewing all of the interns from the Recess, USIP, and Geo Launchpad programs and posting short intern spotlights on UNAVCO's websites that kind of highlighted what these students are working on this summer, their backgrounds in geology, and their future plans. And so Courtney and I had the chance to bond with the interns by talking about their experiences and really learn about what they're working on this summer, since we only had a week in Colorado. But these interviews and their posts online really allow the UNAVCO community members to have some insight as to what these internships look like and what they mean for the interns, and how some of their research and programs have really changed the trajectory of the career paths and lives of some of these students because of what they've learned this summer and the experiences that they've gained. Another lesson that Courtney and I learned this summer was how to incorporate accessibility, diversity, and inclusion into science communication. So I remember a quote that said that accessible design is just good design, and it's always stood out to me this summer. And I think that one aspect of what we did, which is really having robust captions on YouTube videos, kind of exemplifies this, where everyone benefits from having really clear transcript and captions on a YouTube video. So here we have one of Becca Bizard's tutorials for a SAR tool. And so Courtney and I went in, we made sure that acronyms were correct and scientific terms were correct. We added punctuation and made sure that the timing reflected when the speaker spoke in the video, so that someone who's hard of hearing would be able to still follow along the tutorial, as well as somebody who just wanted to reference the transcript or read the captions without having to listen to the audio in order to get the most from this tutorial.
Building on that, as we were working with the website, the accessibility is definitely a big thing to keep in mind for anyone, regardless of disability background, internet connection, really anything like that. So learning how to keep a web page for anyone by using alt text for images so they can still see what the image is about if it's not loading up or they're having trouble seeing it, using titles and headings properly to really convey the meaning and structure of the page or article, and then of course keeping content clear and concise, and then as well as using colors properly so it's easy to see. So just really some big things that I don't think we think about all the time, but it was definitely a good reminder as we were working with the website that these things are definitely really important. And then another thing that we got to work with was kind of updating the Recess website as well, which is separate from UNAVCO's website. So it was really great to dive into all the content and keeping all the important information on there so that future students who are interested in joining the program, they have all the proper info they need, and it really encourages them to apply. So this is a really important website to have, and I'm not sure if it's live quite yet, but I think it will be soon. So I'm really excited and hope that it will continue increasing diversity in earth sciences.
Similarly, I talked about earlier how we interviewed all of the interns and created little posts about them. And of course, that included the Recess interns. And this was particularly exciting because the Recess program is devoted to increasing diversity in the geosciences. So we hope that by sharing these interns' experiences and the research they're doing, as well as their backgrounds in geology, that people will be able to see some representation in geosciences, and that those who have had similar experiences in geology might feel encouraged and supported in geology to apply for the Recess program, or just to continue with careers in geology by reading these interview spotlights. The last aspect of what Courtney and I learned this summer were the technical and career skills that were necessary to complete our science communication internship. So I talked about earlier using GIFs to communicate different scientific topics on Twitter and our other social media platforms. But in order to do this, I had to learn how to use Adobe Photoshop to really go by frame from some of the UNAVCO videos and pick clips out that were just a few seconds long that could accurately depict a scientific topic and really help with the understanding of this topic. And so I also had to make sure that these GIFs were the appropriate size to fit the requirements that social media platforms like Twitter have that are fairly strict in the size of the image or video that you can upload. So it was a challenge, but I think that as you could see from our social media stats, it was very rewarding, and we were able to garner a lot of interest in geodesy through these GIFs.
And of course, as I mentioned quite a few times, we did work with WordPress and HTML for the website migration. So this is just kind of a quick before and after. So this is one of the before pages, which is the borehole instrumentation in the next slide. this is kind of the updated version. So, it's a little more colorful and engaging and kind of draws the reader in a little bit more. But it was definitely a really good practice to learn how to utilize the different tools and blocks that come with WordPress to make a web page kind of really succinct and put all the information in one spot. So definitely a good skill that we'll carry with us.
And then beyond the WordPress skills that Courtney just discussed, Courtney and I both enrolled in like a short HTML course in the beginning of the internship. So we've also gained some of the basic understandings of how HTML works and how to code in HTML. Of course, we also gained a lot of new knowledge about how to communicate scientific topics to the public, both through our UNAVCO news post that we shared earlier, as well as on social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And kind of an unexpected career skill that I feel like I've gained this summer are interviewing skills. So both how to be an effective interviewer as well as what makes a good interviewee. So I think that I learned a lot about how to think on my feet and ask critical questions to really get at what students were working on this summer and the importance of their research and their projects. And I learned how to be a better interviewer. But at the same time, when I go back and listen to the recordings of these interviews to create the articles, and I would listen or read these transcriptions, I learned a lot about what makes a good interview answer. And so I definitely carry this with me in the future as I both interview people in the future for science communication purposes and am interviewed in the future for things like job interviews. I feel like I have a better understanding of what makes a good interviewer and a good interviewee. So in conclusion, I definitely learned a lot about how to communicate science to and engage with the public, which was my main goal through this internship. So I'm really excited about the new skills that I've learned. I've also learned how to prioritize diversity, accessibility, and inclusion in science communication. And I've gained a lot of technical and interview skills like we just talked about in the last slide. And kind of unexpectedly from the What is Geodesy page, I've really increased my interest in geodetic systems like GPS, and I hope that I'll be able to learn more about them in the future.
For me, I definitely was able to kind of diversify my scientific writing skills. I've been working on my thesis, so kind of the different mediums I got to write with was really refreshing. And then I've also just working with UNAVCO increased, definitely have more interest in working with GPS, and hopefully at some point I'll get to incorporate that in either my current or future research opportunities. And just strengthening my skills with WordPress and HTML was really useful as well, since it'd been about 10 years or so since I worked with it. So it was a good refresher. And then also just really getting a better understanding of how to communicate on social media. It's definitely a lot harder than it looks. So kind of learning all the ins and outs and the best ways to do that in a way that's really effective has been a good experience as well. And lastly, we definitely would like to thank our mentor, Scott Johnson, for all of his guidance and patience and encouragement. I think I speak for Lucia when we say we definitely learned a lot from him. And then just thank you to the ECE team for kind of incorporating us and letting us come to the meetings and learn from you guys and valuing our thoughts and opinions on everything through the program. And we've really enjoyed it. So thanks for everyone for listening and whatnot, and we'll gladly answer any questions.
Great job, both of you. So we'll open the floor for questions. If you have questions, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself, or you can type them in the chat and I'll read them aloud for you. I have a question though. So you worked with WordPress, you worked with HTML. Do you feel like you have a preference for one over the other?
I definitely have a preference for WordPress. I think that it's just a lot easier and more user-friendly to be able to convert the, all of the material in a WordPress-based format as opposed to like the straight HTML code.
Yeah, I like coding, but I definitely would prefer WordPress. So if I had a choice.
Okay, Levi, you can ask your question.
Oh, yeah. So with the your follower count and the engagement, I was wondering if you compared it to maybe past years at all and what that looked like.
That's a really good idea. We did not compare it to past years, but we should definitely look into that in the future.
Yeah, it'd be easy enough to do for sure.
Okay, we have a question in the chat. Donna would like to know, she says, you did some amazing work with social media. Do you have any suggestions to us, ECE or Scott, on how we can continue to increase the engagement?
I feel like the biggest thing is just like posting consistently. I think that's how we were able to gain so many followers, because they saw like the amazing Fieldwork Friday and geodesy posts that Courtenay was posting throughout the summer. And we regularly had posts like the intern spotlights go on our Twitter account, and just like having the consistent posts really garnered a lot of interest from the public in what we were doing at UNAVCO.
I'd have to agree there. I've definitely learned it's much more difficult to kind of find something every day to post on social media, but I think it definitely pays off in the long run.